5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. The other day, you and I went to the little pizza place next door, and we had lunch. And here comes walking in the door a guy and a lady, and the guy's got gray hair and a gray beard, and he's looking at me with a big smile and coming closer, and I go, Artie? Now, Artie is somebody I worked with 1974, 1975, something like that. And so, oh, man, I hadn't seen him in so long. So he sits down with us, and he's telling us all these things. He's, yeah, I'm going to be retiring in 6 months. Well, that's the story of everybody around me. Everybody is retiring. Everybody is either announcing that they are going to retire or that they have already retired. And I keep saying, nope, not me. I'm still 16. Sorry. I haven't grown up yet. Frederick Vettese is on the phone to set me straight. He doesn't believe I'm 16, I'm sure. Frederick is the chief actuary of Morneau Chappelle. I may be mispronouncing that. It's a retirement consultant and pension plan consulting firm, right? Mm-hmm. It also says he enjoys piano and golf. Now, that sounds like a retired person to me.
I love
The
that.
Essential Retirement Guide is the title of the book, a very comprehensive book, but maybe a little bit contrary to what you would expect from a book about retirement. Frederick Vettese, good morning. I hope I'm pronouncing everything right. I'm guessing I'm not. Good morning, sir.
You're doing great so far. No, you're doing great so far. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Toronto, Canada.
Toronto. Are you getting any of that snow that we're hearing about, or not yet?
You know what? No, we're not. Unlike Buffalo, it gets a ton of snow all the time. It tends to bypass us, so it's actually pretty dry out there.
Oh, okay. Now, why is this, in addition to being the Essential Retirement Guide, why is the subtitle A Contrarian's Perspective? Explain that.
Everybody wants to be a contrarian because it kind of suggests that they're smarter than the average person. And I guess I'm not immune to that. It is contrarian in some ways. I would say the biggest way is the financial industry in the U.S. is still saying that your retirement income target should be 70% or 80% of your final income, and that is just not true. And I go to some pains in the first section of the book to explain why it's not true, and that why for the majority of people, at least ones who with higher earnings who have to save for retirement, why the majority of people will only have a retirement income target of about 50%. So that would probably be about the most contrarian finding I've got in the book.
Okay, and are you saying that that's okay, or that we should be working to make sure it's at least 70?
I'm saying that if you actually reach 50% of your retirement income, that you're going to be able to maintain the lifestyle that you've had during the time you were working. Fact is, for most people in their 40s, especially in their 40s, they're actually living on less than 40% of their retirement income.
Really?
When you subtract off income tax, subtract off child raising expenses, mortgage payments, actual saving for retirement, payroll
Alimony.
taxes, employment expenses,
Alimony.
and alimony if you got it. Now, I don't know about the alimony part, but all the other ones, all those other things I just said, all tend to go away by the time you retire, and those are all big ticket items, and that's why we tend to need just about 50%. Rough dollars of our income by the time we retire.
So that sounds like good news. So that sounds like if we do happen to be lucky enough to have 70%, then we're doing better than the average person. Am I right?
Yes, you are. Definitely. Even in the public sector pensions, which are everyone thinks of as being really generous, and they are generous. Those are really good pensions. Even there, the workers aren't even getting 70% because they end up maybe having 28, 30 years of service, and they end up maybe getting about 60%. But those are considered to be very generous pensions. So no one really gets there.
The story I told in the intro was absolutely true, by the way. And so if my friend, who I haven't seen since 1974, is retiring in 6 months or whatever he said, would the book help him prepare for that at this close to retirement time, or should we be preparing way before now or then?
Well, you always should be preparing sooner. But no, there's a whole bunch of things in the book that are still going to be quite helpful. For example, the question is, let's say you have your little nest egg and you're now 62 years old, whatever. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to manage the money yourself, or are you going to buy an annuity? So I talk about this at some length in the book as well as to whether an annuity makes a lot of sense. And the biggest fear people tend to have in retirement is that they're going to be outliving their money. and yet like, fewer than 5% of people buy an annuity. An annuity is something you buy from an insurance company, and they'll pay you a fixed monthly amount for the rest of your life, even if you live until 105. So why wouldn't someone do that, as opposed to managing their own money, or being worried about a loss in the stock market, or really low interest rates, and seeing their money dissipate before they reach their old age. So I talk about that at some length in the book.
Frederick, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the area you're talking to is there's a lot of people who are snowbirds here from your area of the world, from Toronto area. They just chose to live here in the winter. It's probably not a surprise to you to hear that, but I'm wondering, because most of them seem to be retired. Are they in the upper level? In other words, if they have two homes, one up there and one down here, that sounds like they're probably doing pretty well for themselves.
If they got two homes, then they would be in the upper level. So the book is aimed to primarily at people who have, first of all, above average earnings. So let's say, as a household, when you usually have two earners in the family, people are earning $75,000 or more a year for a two-earner household. And up to over $200,000. So that's kind of the group that I'm really looking at. In Canada, by the way, for low income, let's say people earning $25,000 a year, they don't have to save at all. So they're quite lucky, and that's because of the way our social security system is set up. They're not quite as lucky in the U.S., and there's actually a pretty big difference in poverty rates amongst low income in the U.S. versus
oh, is that
Canada.
right?
But
so,
they may not come as a surprise to you.
So would we be better off to retire to Canada?
Yeah, but it's probably too late for you to do that. Yeah, I think you have to start at 25.
Too late. Okay.
Think about that.
Talk about the difference between somebody who's married and maybe widowed or divorced. Is there a big difference there?
Yeah. You know what? If you have a spouse that dies versus a spouse that divorces you, there's a huge difference. You're actually better off if you're, and I don't want to be callous when I say this. I'm just talking purely financial terms now. You're actually better off if your spouse dies than if your spouse divorces you. You actually end up being richer on average if you have a spouse that died, and so now whatever the remaining assets are, they're all yours. When you have a spouse that divorces you, all of a sudden you're poor. And there are certain rules of thumb about how much money one needs, depending upon the size of the household. I won't get into the math of it, but essentially, once you split your assets, you are, let's say you end up divorcing at the point of retirement, you end up being about 30% poorer than you were just before the marriage split. So that ends up creating a real problem for somebody who has a shaky marriage at the point of retirement. Mm-hmm. They end up, because what do you do? Do you kind of set aside a whole chunk of money just in case you ever divorce? Well, no one's really going to do that. You spend the money you've got. But you will end up being significantly worse off after a divorce.
You golf? Do you golf?
Do I golf?
Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
So do you ever get down here? We have some nice golf courses here.
Do you know what? I love golfing in Orlando.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
I've tried. Yeah, I've got to come down to Orlando a number of times to golf. And there's many public courses in the area which are excellent. So I'll keep on doing that.
But you're not retired yet, are you?
I'm not. So that's something else I discovered in the book too is about retirement age. We some of us are not lucky enough to have control over it, and some are. And what I found is that if you have some control, if you have no control of your life, you're a cog in a big company, mm-hmm. And you're working long hours week in and week out. You're always going to fantasize about retiring early. If you have control of your hours, control of what you do with your time, and so on, then you almost never want to retire. That's why you see musicians working.
Me too.
Into their 80s, and actors, and university professors, and so on. So I've kind of got that position myself these days. I kind of write about what I'd like to write about, and
mm-hmm. Same thing with radio people, by the way.
Yeah.
Radio. Same thing.
Yeah.
Frederick Vettese. We'll take a little break and be right back. The book is called The Essential Retirement Guide: A Contrarian's Perspective. I think we already had that part explained. We'll be right back. If you have any questions, you're invited to call. The number is 622-9622. We're down here in what's the temperature here? I just want to rub it in a little bit.
About 48.
Oh man.
No, 52. It's 52.
Oh, sorry.
We'll We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For Thursday, partly sunny to high 69 to 73. Increasing clouds Thursday night with lows in the 50s to near 60. Friday, rather cloudy and breezy. Look for a couple of showers and a heavier thunderstorm, especially during the afternoon and evening hours. Thunderstorms can produce damaging wind gusts, even an isolated tornado. The high tomorrow between 70 and 74. Windy and much colder on Saturday. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hi, this is Becky at Hello Gorgeous Salon. Let's get rid of those sun damaged ends and faded out color and get into something rich and vibrant. It's time to get that new look started. So call today and set up your appointment at Hello Gorgeous Salon, 351-5358. Hello Gorgeous is a certified Brazilian blowout salon. We can tame those locks, leaving your hair healthy and shiny with a Brazilian smoothing treatment. And whether you're going on a job interview or out on a date, your hands do a lot of talking. Manicures are a must. Hello Gorgeous is a full-service salon, so let us help you make a great first impression. Call us today to set your appointment at Hello Gorgeous. Our number is 352-351-5358. Again, that's 352-351-5358. Hello Gorgeous is conveniently located in the heart of downtown Ocala, right next to the historic Marion Theater. And don't forget, we also do men and children's cuts too.
Hello, gorgeous.
Do you have areas that have started sagging or drooping? Is what you're looking at not quite the same as it was years ago? Are there enhancements you've been putting off? Is there serious damage you need fixed? Then call on us, Damage Control Services, when your roof is sagging and the drywall is drooping after a storm, or your home just needs some enhancements. From damage repairs to new construction, Damage Control Services is here to help.
Hi, I'm Leah Caruso with Strive Rehabilitation, inviting you to join me Thursday at 11 a.m. for Health Matters. Ocala Health and Strive have teamed up to bring you the latest information on good health services available to you right here at home. This vital information will help you make informed decisions about your health. So don't forget to join me here at 11 a.m. Thursday. It's news you can use from Ocala Health, Strive, and your friends here at WOCA.
All right, 17 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. I know that a lot of our listeners are working, and I know that a lot of our listeners are probably listening intently because retirement is an important thing. You look forward to it. You say, what am I going to do when I retire? And then people like you and I, we say, I don't ever want to retire. I love what I do, but there's a certain time when you say, I'm going to hang it up. I don't know when that's going to be for me, but
yeah,
I'll be 104.
Yeah, we need to have an income.
And then I'm still going to not want to do that. Frederick Vettese is going to help us out with this. He has written the book, The Essential Retirement Guide. By the way, he's up in Toronto, where it is 25 degrees Fahrenheit, -4 Celsius, if you're that.
Wow. When people talk about owning things, paying off their homes, paying off their cars, is it a good thing for a person to get one of those reverse mortgages when they retire?
Some people may not have a choice. They may have to get that reverse mortgage simply to have enough income in retirement. I would say that I would make a stipulation, though, that there's a huge difference in the kind of debt you might be incurring. And I'm not talking about your listeners who are still working. Big difference between mortgage debt versus say a consumer debt like credit card debt. Because mortgage debt, what it does is you have mortgage payments. It actually suppresses your own personal consumption. So you end up being able to consume less. And what that does is it actually lowers your retirement income target. You get used to spending less money because you're always paying off that mortgage. Consumer debt, credit card debt, is just the opposite. It actually enhances or expands your consumption and just makes it that much tougher to retire. Not only do you have the debt, but you also have this greater appetite for spending.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to be careful about taking on debt for that reason as well. You'll have a greater appetite going into retirement in terms of spending. Before
the break, I invited our listeners to call in, and so let's take some of those calls. Thank you for calling in. You're on the air with Frederick Vettese.
Good morning, Frederick. I played by the rules my entire life, and then we wind up at this stage of the game. I'm in my 70s now, and you have an anti-American government in Washington who now regulates everything, including the savings banks and every other bank. And the Fed is making billionaires out of Wall Street millionaires, while the interest rate is 1/10 of 1%. Now, I'm with regional banks and not the 1%ers, and it just seems like that everybody's pulling the rug out from under you. And basically how I see it is they're diminishing my savings with this 0.1% interest, saying that there's no inflation and all that. Well, we know there's definitely inflation. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions. I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Thank you for the call.
Sure. Well, thanks for that. So you can't fully blame the government for the low interest rates. Certainly, the recession caused and the outfall from that caused the government to introduce quantitative easing. They forced down interest rates for a little while, but that was 7 years ago. And the thing is, interest rates are still low. So in the book, I talk about why they're still low, and I conclude that it's demographics. We have an aging population, which means more savers than borrowers. People are looking for ways to invest their money and get yield. And when you have an imbalance of supply and demand, it means that interest rates end up going down. This is actually a very difficult time to be retired. Just for that reason alone, you can't get a safe yield anymore from fixed income investments like you would have been able to do 20 years ago. Unfortunately, because of that, because it's a demographic, in fact, it's not just because of a recession. It's going to be with us for the next 20 or 30 years. What I conclude in the book is that there's only one of two things you can do in that situation. You can't really rely on getting interest from a bank at, as you say, 1/10 of 1%. Or even 1%, because it just isn't going to cut it. You can do one of two things. First of all is you can invest your monies in stocks and keep your fingers crossed. That's a little, it makes a lot of people nervous, because there will be 2 or 3 years every 10 years when the stock market is going to be in a losing situation. And right now may be one of them. The other thing you can do is buy an annuity, and I just want to stress that I have no vested interest in annuities or in insurance companies. I don't benefit from them at all, but when I've analyzed them, they do make some sense. So the underlying interest rate in an annuity, it's never announced. It might be more like 2.5%, 3% these days. So you're getting that versus only the 1/10 of 1%, and unfortunately, that's about the best you can do these days.
Is it better for a person that's retired to keep all of their money and then they make out their will and then they split the money that way, or should they set up trust funds after they get retired with a certain percentage for each child or entity and then keep the rest for them? That's a complicated question. And it also brings a lot of tax implications into account. I would say, the one thing I would say about it is that if you do want to be giving money to your children, it makes a lot more sense to be giving it when your children are somewhere between the age of 20 and 35. That's when they really need the money. They're starting out in life. They have student loans. They want to make a down payment on a house. They're struggling with a couple of young children, whatever. That's the time they really need the money. Holding on to it until you're 90 and your kids, in quotation marks, are now 60, that's the time when they really aren't going to need the money anymore. So to the extent that you think you can part with some of your money and give it as a gift to your children, you want to think about doing it when they can really need it, when they can really use it.
Is there a way to calculate that? Let's say you luck out in the lifespan category and you didn't think you would. Let's say you thought you would die at 80-something and you lived to be 90-something, 10 more years or 15 more years. Would you kind of be on cruise control or the whole way, or do you suddenly hit a wall and find yourself even worse off when you're in your mid-80s?
Well, it depends upon your spending habits. So the good news here is, and this is based on studies in 4 countries, including the United States. The good news is that we do end up spending less money in real terms as we get older. It's hard to imagine that when you're 60, because the 60s is the whole time when we keep on spending more and more money. We want to take vacations. We want to spend money on our golfing trips and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So it is an active time. However, I've seen extensive studies done in Germany, UK, United States, and Canada, it seems like 70 to 74 is a tipping point. Suddenly we start spending less money. And it's not because we have less money to spend, but simply because we have either a less capacity to spend because we now have arthritis or some other kind of ailment, or or loss of a spouse, and we just have less interest in, say, travel and so on. So we end up spending less money, and this phenomenon goes on right until they're 80. So that would be the good news, that whatever money you think you might need, and you're looking out from age 60, you might be overestimating it. On our website, www.morneauschapelle, that's MORNEAUSHEPELL.com, and /wealth target. There's actually a calculator where you don't have to give any personal information like addresses or anything. There's a calculator. It's totally free, and you have to answer about 25 questions, and it actually gives you an estimate of how much money you need at the point of retirement in order to meet all your goals. And it takes into account that you may want to be leaving some money to your children. It takes into account that you may have worries about long-term care and so on. Obviously, nothing is perfect, but this is probably as good as it gets in terms of taking all your salient characteristics into account.
Yeah, MorneauChapelle.com is this website that Frederick mentioned, and I want to mention that for those of you driving, you couldn't write that down. Don't worry, Robin already put that on the WOCA guest list portion of our site. So if you go to today's date on the guest list, you'll see Morneau Chapelle there. Plus, we do record these interviews, and you can listen to them, share them later on. We put them on Facebook and YouTube, and you are free to share them any way you want. But I have a copy of the book also. That's probably the best news.
It's wonderful.
So let me give this one away, and then I'm going to ask Frederick to give us information so we can go buy the book. If you want the one that was sent to us, call me right now, 622-9622, and I'll put your name on it. It'll be waiting for you here at the studios at the Paddock Mall. It's called The Essential Retirement Guide, A Contrarian's Perspective, written by Frederick Vettese. And Frederick, how do the rest of us go buy this? How do we do that?
The easiest way to buy the book would be to go online, either Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, and just punch in The Essential Retirement Guide. The book will come up, and that's about the easiest way to buy it, probably also the least expensive way to buy it.
And now when you're talking about long-term care, that really is a good issue, because most of those assisted living facilities that are private, they charge like at least $3,000 a month. And sometimes people don't want to see their lifelong savings go down the tubes just to give to one of those facilities. And so would they make better arrangements to have people come into their home?
No, actually, having people coming into your home ends up being maybe even more expensive. For example, if you need round-the-clock nursing care, it's going to cost a lot more money than $3,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And that may be like the worst-case scenario. I actually have a neighbor whose wife has Alzheimer's, and for the last 10 years, he's had two caregivers who stay in the place around the clock, as well as some private nursing care, and he's paying a fortune for it. You don't have to pay a fortune. I mean, that would be like the worst-case scenario. There are nursing homes. Some of them are subsidized, like government nursing homes. Some of them are subsidized. Some have private accommodation, and they end up being not too bad. You want to obviously get the best of them. When someone isn't totally disabled, but you might still have someone, say, living with you with some, say, part-time care coming in, and that would be more affordable.
Oh, okay.
But the idea about saving like a whole ton of money in order to be able to afford long-term care, first of all, you may never need it. Maybe one person in three actually needs long-term care, and usually it's for a fairly short time, like maybe a year or less, as opposed to many years. So yeah, you may never need it. But on top of that, if you do need it, and you want to have some state financial support for it, they make you use your own money first before they'll give you any
That's right, they sure
support.
Do.
So
yeah.
So people actually draw down their money, draw down their savings before they reach that point.
That's absolutely true. Frederick, thank you so much. Very interesting stuff. Remember, we recorded this. It'll be on YouTube and Facebook by 2 o'clock this afternoon. Frederick Vettese, thank you for calling. If you're in Florida, stop by and say hi. We're at the Paddock Mall in Ocala.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Frederick. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu.
My wife said we're shopping like college kids on a weekend.
They're shopping up a storm ahead of a big storm anticipated to hit the Northeast. People as far south as Arkansas and Georgia and in the mid-Atlantic states also doing storm prep in the D.C. area.
A light dusting of snow last night snarled traffic for hours, even delaying President Obama's motorcade. It's still dicey this morning. Cars have spun out and tractor trailers have been pulling over.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland, the president of Russia, implicated in a poisoning.
At the end of a long inquiry, a judge ruling that Vladimir Putin, quote, probably approved a plan to kill Alexander Litvinenko, who died here in London 10 years ago after drinking tea laced with radioactive poison.
Fox Radio's Simon Owen claims her first-time jobless help last week hitting a 6-month high.